All right, let's move on now to Ukraine. A very interesting piece in the Washington Post. Not necessarily the reporting itself, but more about what it signifies and what the people who were leaking to them have revealed, at least, about U.S. policy. So let's put this up there on the screen. Here's what they say, quote, U.S. warns Ukraine it faces a pivotal moment in the war. Now, the reason why this matters are a bunch of background quotes from the senior administration officials. They say, despite promises to back Ukraine as long as it takes, Biden officials say recent aid packages from Congress represent Kyiv's best chance to decisively change the course of the war, and they pointed specifically to Republican efforts to not support any new aid to Ukraine. So the second thing that I found fascinating was this. Senior administration said the Biden administration will continue to request as much funding as it believes, but there's no guarantees that Congress will actually do it. Now they say that the war in recent months has become a slow grind, with neither side gaining the upper hand. Biden officials believe the critical juncture will come this spring, when Russia is expected to launch its offensive. And more broadly, I think the real headline out of it is they were basically like, it's now or never. We're probably not going to be able to provide you any more weapons or support after this year. And after this point, you're going to have to go to the negotiating table.
Yeah.
What they point to, and actually, there was a couple of things here which really made me raise my eyebrows. Number one, Krystal, was this line. So everyone should remember that we have given 100 or appropriated 100 billion to Ukraine. I believe we have 60 billion left. Now, currently, on the pace that Ukraine is using ammunition, they warn that Ukraine will exhaust the current congressional package as early as this summer. So they're going to roll through 60 billion in ammo and in weapons and in support in literally a matter of months, just showing you how much ammo that they are consuming over there in Ukraine. So number two is actually this. Zelensky is making some moves which are really rubbing the White House the wrong way. So specifically in regards to defending the town of Bakhmut, which we've talked here, they just evacuated all those aid workers.
Yeah.
Here's what they say. Ukraine has expended significant resources and troops defending Bakhmut. American military analysts have argued it is unrealistic to simultaneously defend Bakhmut and launch a spring counteroffensive to retake what the U.S. views as more critical territory. Zelensky, however, attaches a symbolic importance to Bakhmut and believes that it would be a blow to morale to lose the city. He said his country's forces would fight as long as we can. However, what they point to is that Zelensky, while he may know best to rally his country, have expressed concern that if they keep fighting everywhere that Russia sends troops, it will only work to Moscow's advantage. Why? Because Moscow has tremendous amount more material. They also say, according to them, they have an initial force. Russia had 150,000 troops. Right now they have 300,000. Now you have hundreds of thousands more assembled in the draft. They're about to come there. They are going to outnumber Ukrainian forces significantly. Now Ukraine's going to be on the defensive, and a defensive warrior is always going to have, you're going to need less necessarily. However, it will change if you're doing an offensive. But what they say is that Zelensky is expending a, quote, extraordinary amount of blood and treasure for the city of Bakhmut, which has no strategic value, and that instead what he should have been doing was basically holding back, getting some of these weapons, conserving ammunition. One of the things that it kind of pointed to me is Zelensky is actually in much more of a desperate gamble than people may think. He's trying to hold together the actual population of Ukraine, and also part of the reason why he's on this whole push for more is they can do math and how much they're expending ammo. Right today, Kamala Harris just landed in Munich. The NATO Secretary General over the last couple of days has been making pleas from all over NATO. He's like, look, Ukraine needs a hell of a lot of ammo. I mean, if you're rolling through $60 billion of weapons in literally 4 months, and there's still not even an actual Russian offensive that's happening right now, I don't really know what to say in terms of sustainability of this conflict, because they ain't got no industrial base, they got no ammunition or whatever of their own. Like, it is completely based on our support. So,
and Russia still has the capability to ramp up. I mean,
if they want to.
Rumors, if they want to. There have been rumors of another draft just in terms of just sheer manpower. These would be inexperienced recruits basically sent, you know, like grist to the millstone or whatever that saying is, but they do have that capability. And the piece that really stood out to me in that Washington Post article is, we talked to you before about how Rand Corporation, which is mostly funded by the Pentagon, put out this long assessment saying, look, we are not headed to an outright victory for Ukraine. We are not headed to an outright victory for Russia. We're headed to a stalemate. And the best thing we could do is try to avoid a really long, it's already a long war, try to avoid a really long war, because the costs of this thing are a disaster. The cost in terms of the obvious risk of escalation, the obvious risks of potential Russian nuclear usage, but also in terms of Ukrainian civilian casualties, Ukrainian economic devastation, world hunger and poverty increasing because of increased food and fuel prices. These costs, they say, are far too great for too little gain, given that what we're headed to is a stalemate. So we told you about that. Well, in this report, they talk about how U.S. intelligence officials have concluded something similar. Quote, they have concluded that retaking the heavily fortified Crimean Peninsula is beyond the capability of Ukraine's army right now. That sobering assessment has been reiterated to multiple committees on Capitol Hill over the last several weeks. So that, again, underscores this idea that Zelensky has put out, and plenty of administration and congressional leaders have backed, that we're going to have complete victory, we're going to push Russians out of Crimea. That is a fantasy. They say that discrepancy between aims and capabilities has raised concerns in Europe that the Ukraine conflict will persist indefinitely, overburdening the West as it grapples with other challenges, including high inflation and unstable energy prices. And against that background, here's the money quote, Biden's aides say they are pursuing the best course of action, empowering Ukraine to retake as much territory as possible in coming months before sitting down with Putin at the negotiating table. Now, is this really what they think? And is this really a strategy that they will stick to? If we get down the road and Ukraine does well and consolidates their position or takes back a little bit more ground, are we then going to say, all right, now's the time to negotiate? Or are we going to feed ourselves this lie that we fed ourselves before of Ukraine can win? We got to keep pushing. We got to keep fueling it. We got to keep shipping them arms and increase the amount of military aid that we are getting them. Because so far in this conflict, all roads have led to that same conclusion. If Ukraine's on the back foot and they're not doing well, oh, we got to help them. We got to strengthen their negotiating hand. And if they're doing well, oh, they can win. They can have complete and outright victory. So I hope that this report is accurate, that this is actually what they're thinking, but I remain skeptical until I actually see any sort of push for diplomacy, keeping in mind that it was the U.S. that nuked an early potential peace deal in the first weeks of this war.
I don't actually believe it. I think this is meant to more pacify domestic political forces that are against it. I am completely of the same belief. If they have even a modest success, there's no way in hell even the Republicans will stop the arms. Look, I hope so, but we'll see. The second thing is that, let's say that they're on the back foot tremendously, then of course, the same narrative, oh, we can't let it happen. It's like a sunk cost fallacy at this point. So, I mean, we got $100 billion invested in it. The only thing that may actually be the limiting factor is literally the sheer amount of ammunition that they require and our inability to provide it to them without also hurting our own defense stock. The U.S. Navy Secretary already said that's the case. By the way, if you think we might have ammo problems, the Euros have way less of stockpiles than we do. They are already also on the back foot, and they might have to cannibalize their own forces. They're welcome to do that if they would like to. I don't think that they will. So if anything, it may be actual straight up industrial production of economies which are not in a total war environment like Ukraine that might be the broader limiting factor on all of this. But I think you should take Zelensky's recent push abroad as evidence that he is seeing the exact same thing, which is like, we're using a lot of ammo. By the way, included in this, Congress is going to appropriate another $10 billion more likely to balance the budget of Ukraine, which I can't ever particularly get over that one. We're going to make sure that their economic house is shored up, not the IMF or any of these others, on top of the $100 billion that we've already appropriated towards them. So it is possible that this could be the end, but I am very, very doubtful of it. Politically, what we alluded to earlier, let's put this up there on the screen, Glenn Greenwald flagging this from a new poll of Republican primary voters. 50% of voters say they are less likely to support a candidate who supports providing military aid to Ukraine. DeSantis has not really said anything about Ukraine. We don't really know where he stands. Some of his votes in the House were pretty much just typical of what a GOP politician would say. But Nikki Haley and Mike Pompeo have been actually criticizing Biden for not sending enough weapons to Ukraine or not supporting them enough. And clearly Trump views this as a major attack vector. There was a Politico piece from a couple of days ago where Trump believes that one of the ways that he could, what he can divide the Republican primary is he can be the one who is anti-war. And I've always believed, that Trump is incredibly good at pointing and finding a cleavage in American policy where nobody is willing to say it. But now look, We had an argument about this with Kyle and Marshall on the other side. They were saying, oh, well, actually, it's very popular to support Ukraine. I mean, right now we're at 50-50. And in terms of where the conflict is likely to go, oh, we're going to ship another 10 billion. Well, that's going to make headlines. Maybe that'll change things. Depending on how the Ukrainians do, that could change things as well. Who the hell knows what things are going to look like a year and a half from now? So if I was Trump, I'd be a betting man on this position. Absolutely.
Clearly, he's leaning into. I mean, this is one of the first things he hit Nikki Haley on. They're signaling they're going to hit Ron DeSantis over it. As you said, Saagar, I don't think DeSantis has said a lot with regards to Russia. The things he has said have been a quite different tone than what Trump has said. I've got a New York Times piece on DeSantis's foreign policy approach where they've got a few quotes here. They say, where Mr. Trump responded to the war by calling Russian President Vladimir Putin a genius for invading, Mr. DeSantis decried the invasion as a Russian strategic blunder. Trump long admired Putin as powerful and intelligent. DeSantis has dubbed him a, quote, authoritarian gas station attendant. Trump notoriously accepted Putin's denial of Russian meddling in the 2016 elections. From the New York Times, guys. Mr. DeSantis in 2013 saw, quote, Putin as somebody who's trying to confront the U.S. and last year included Russia on a short list of countries with nefarious intentions to engage in espionage or influence operations in Florida. So he's taken a sort of, verbally, a more traditional Republican approach, more like the way Mitt Romney talked about
Yeah,
Russia.
but none of those are like, we need to support Ukraine.
No,
so,
I don't think, I'm from, what I've seen, he hasn't said a whole lot on it. But clearly Trump thinks that based on his sort of more neocon approach from when he was in the House, that this might be a place where he can push him.
See, this gets back to the discussion we had earlier, which is, I think, the biggest limiting factor for DeSantis on foreign policy is going to be the fact that all the billionaires who are not going to back Trump are going to be the neocons themselves, who there. If you think like MSNBC people are cringe on Ukraine, you should meet some of these folks.
Hey guys, ready or not, 2024 is fully upon us now, and Saagar and I have been brainstorming ways that we can really up our game for this critical election.
Yeah, we rely on our premium subs to expand our coverage, to add staff, to upgrade the studio. We just want to give you the best independent coverage of this election, which is possible. So if you can help us out, become a premium subscriber today, breakingpoints.com, or the link is down here in the description video. It really means the world to us. And if you like what we're all about, this is the best possible way to keep us 100% independent, working only for you.